Sorry, Melissa.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Alyssa Karpenka, and I am the event coordinator for McNally Robinson Booksellers in Saskatoon. This event is coming to you from Treaty 6 territory, the traditional lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis nations. Just to note that the event is being live streamed to our YouTube page, so please be aware of the webcam behind you. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Heritage Festival of Saskatoon Speaker Series, featuring Elaine Sutherland as our host and speakers Michael Afenfia and Delvin Kanêwiyakiho. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you to Rianne Van Beek and Irene Legat of the Heritage Festival for their work in making this event possible. Elaine Sutherland is a proud Willow Cree woman from Beardy's and Okamasas First Nation in Treaty 6 territory. A professional educator and director of treaty education with the Office of the Treaty Commissioner, she is passionate about her work and wants to ensure all treaty people have the opportunity to learn about their rights and obligations. I'll turn things over to her. Elaine, please give her a warm welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Very warm welcome to those in attendance. Very warm welcome to our guests, special guests, Michael and Delvin, and to those that are online as well as those that are here. A very nice thank you to McNally for hosting this beautiful event, and great big thank you to the Heritage Festival of Saskatoon as well. Very first, I'd like to introduce Michael Afenfia. Michael is a writer and storyteller. His bestsellers, The Mechanics of Yenagoa and Rain Can Never Know, continue to receive positive reviews worldwide. His other books include When the Moon Caught Fire, A Street Called Lonely, and Don't Die on Wednesday. His sixth novel, Leave My Bones in Saskatoon, is a novel about his immigration experience and is scheduled for worldwide release in the spring of 2023. A lawyer and MBA holder, Michael's day job is leading Saskatchewan Association of Immigrant Settlement and Integration Agencies as the executive director. Before that, he worked as a cultural bridging facilitator with Saskatoon Open Door Society. Since arriving in Canada in the summer of 2019, Michael has served on several committees on boards supporting the community. Presently, he is on the board of Word on the Street Saskatoon and the Multicultural Council of Saskatchewan. He is also a member of the Saskatchewan Writers Guild. In addition to his writing and work in the settlement sector in Canada, he contributes to conversations around race relations and equity for the BIPOC population through published articles and public speaking engagements. In his spare time, Michael mentors young creatives in his home country, Nigeria, and in Canada. At other times, he can be found watching television, listening to music, or traveling. Michael, warm welcome to you, please.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I never get used to that introduction. Sometimes I hear people read that and I'm like, who's that guy? So thank you so much for the introduction. This festival kind of means a lot to me because I know last year, I think, I had applied to be on the board of the festival and was graciously accepted to be at the festival. The last festival I just held, and I was looking forward to being a part of the planning for this one. And then life happened. I changed jobs, and so I couldn't commit to the board. And so I left, and then I got this call to say, oh, Michael, would you be a part of this festival in this capacity? So I'm so excited to be here. It feels like I never left. I have a new book coming out in the spring. It was a book that was a beautiful book now, I would say, but it was one that was difficult to write at the time. Being new to Canada, I arrived at Saskatoon, but for the very first time to Canada and Saskatoon in August of 2019. And like most immigrants, newcomers, they're filled with so much excitement. The grass being greener, and then you arrive here, and sometimes you don't even see the grass is all snow. So it gets very confusing. So anyway, to help me get through the life of an immigrant, the experience of being an immigrant, I kind of defaulted to something I know to do best, my comfort zone, which was writing. And so I started a novel, Rain Can Never Know, which was still some, story about Nigeria back then, which is what I was familiar with, and then finished that, and still felt the longing of home, and still feeling like I really didn't belong here. So I went back to writing again, which is what gives me comfort. And when things get really tough and it just feels like, those thoughts of isolation and all that starts to creep in, when I write and I see comments or reviews, mostly positive, thank God, about my writing, kind of boosts my confidence that you can make it here, and people would appreciate what you do. And I'm thankful for the welcoming, and how much my work has been accepted here in Canada, and I'm really, really excited for it, and excited for the advance in Saskatoon as well. The book is not out, so I think only 5 people, maybe 6 or 7 now in the world have read it so far. And so I can't bring it out and read from it, but the book opens with a poem, and the poem was just of my experience, because a few weeks after arriving here, I had to start looking for work, because the money you come to Canada with is like you just see debit a lot, the money is going, and you're not working, no dollar inflow coming in, and you start to freak out. And so you speak to your friends, and then they say, oh, no, you have to work, but you have to do something called survival job. And there are agencies that can help you get the job. So I dressed up one day and went into one of those agencies and said, oh, I'm looking for work. And then they said, oh yeah, we can help you, but you have to write this exam. And then they administered the exam to me, gave me a couple of things to read, and to qualify for that job, I had to lie. And so that became the inspiration for the poem that started with my bones in Saskatoon. And the poem I like, and I'll read it. Remember my last photograph? The one you said smile, and I did. Newsflash, that smile was a lie. The picket fence, the fireplace, the call back home saying everything is fine, that too was a lie. But the cold, the blistering wind in February, that was true. Losing myself in my many identities, that again was true. It is true, these hands have never done his laundry or shoveled snow, mowed or lawn or lifted heavy things. I have never driven a car or dropped off orders because I told, so my voice was heard, loud in the night skies and echoed in the prairies until my truth prevailed. I lied to be here, will my voice lie too? So this very simple poem kind of captures the emotions of being a newcomer and trying to settle. So back to my story about going to that employment office, and they gave me this form. And so on that form, they'll ask you questions like, have you lifted 50 kg or whatever? And I'll say, yes, I have. Of course, I haven't. Have you worked in a farm? Do you know how to bag seeds? And I would say yes. And all that was a lie. And I had to lie because that was the only way I could get the job. And in the other survival jobs I did after then, which is not in my bio, I would lie, like, oh, I've been a security guard before. I was the MD, whatever, of the bank for a couple of years, but I had to say I was the security guard at the bank, just so I could get the job and just so I'd be able to get some money to be able to take care of myself and my family at the time. So as an immigrant, and there are many streams, there are many ways people come to Canada. So my story doesn't represent the entirety of the immigrant experience. And so for some other people, the experience will be different. The people who have come to Canada already had jobs before they arrived, and so their journey was totally different. But there's still so many people who come here as refugees, they're fleeing war, disaster, they've lost everything, they've abandoned friends, family, their 3-bedroom house, their dogs, everything to be here. And so arriving here, you have to start life all over again. What I thought interesting and what really propelled me to write the book was just the lack of information. Even from people I thought would be open, willing and open to share their experiences, somehow never did. So it was that same example where, and I did meet this guy once. I worked in a radio station for a while, and I had this guest come for an interview, and he said to me how for 10 years he lived in Canada, and for 10 years his family back home didn't know he was a cab driver, like he was some professor or whatever he was back in his country, engineer or something. And so how could he tell his mom that he was now the cab driver in Saskatoon, like to break her heart? So he lied for 10 years that it was something else. People would come here and sometimes you just kind of feel disconnected from home because you don't really want to share with them what you do. You stop posting pictures on social media because it will lead to questions. So you just kind of zone out and suddenly reappear when you now have that job, dream job. So the experience can be difficult for some people. But my experience have been, for me, I see everything as learning, and like I try to put a positive spin to everything. And so within a short period, fortunate enough to find work in the settlement sector. And a new journey began for me, the journey to be able to help other newcomers, even though I myself still thought I needed help, but to be able to help other newcomers, and was even more so compelled to again, write the book, Leave My Voice in Saskatoon, because I felt like people need to learn, they need to know the truth. And the truth is not always a bad thing. Like the truth is just saying, oh, be prepared, right? Because in 3 years I've been here, and just last week I officially became a Canadian. I had my citizenship ceremony last week. When I sit back and think of my own experience of being here, there were lows, but there were lots of highs, and those highs were really high. I couldn't jump high enough to touch them. But just being able to put the stories out there and say these things can happen. And I met this person who was a family friend at the time, and would never tell me what his job was, even though he had been in Canada for like 3 or 4 years. And I'm going to work, never said what his job was. So if you don't even tell people back home what your job is, and somehow they find themselves here, they're just as surprised and confused when they have to now, oh, wow, this is what to do, or this is what I have to do. They're not prepared. So Leave My Bones in Saskatoon is not saying don't come to Canada. Canada is a great country, but be prepared. Like sometimes you may have to do these things. And I think another thing fascinating about the book as well, and my experience and the trajectories that the many iterations I've gone through since being here is even like my exposure to the Indigenous peoples of Canada and the culture. One thing I thought like I was really going to miss about living in Nigeria, which is my home country. And coming to Canada was just being disconnected from culture. I thought I would never be able to dress like this because everybody wears jeans in Canada. I would never see ceremonies, and so I was shocked, when I arrived here and I saw, oh wow, these traditions exist. The people who own this land. And so as tiny as it is, maybe a page or maybe a paragraph, I also put that in there so that like people who would read the book who have never been to Canada would know that this land has its original owners and the culture and protocols and things like that here that needs to be respected. And I'm extremely thankful for the friendships I've formed. All across Canada, across different ethnicities, but mostly, with my learning of Indigenous cultures. And that's something I'm really excited about, that I can hear stories from Pukuns, I can see a pipe playing ceremony, I can be in a healing circle and share with people I've never seen or don't know. I know that my fears and my thoughts are safe with them. So as much as I can, to capture that experience and leave my voice in Saskatoon. And I'll just end by saying this, that when I titled the book, Leave My Voice in Saskatoon, it's not just because I think, oh, maybe people might like the title. This is really because I found Saskatoon has become home for me. I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but from first arriving here, coming off of the plane, my feet touching the soil and the land, and all of the great and wonderful things that have happened in my life, I kind of know that maybe not all, but part of my bones have to stay in Saskatoon. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Dr. Sheldon Krasowski, who is the author of No Surrender, The Land It Remains Indigenous, was unable to be here this evening, so he sends his regards to everybody that's here and who is listening. He is the Director of Research and Archives at the Office of the Treaty Commissioner. On his behalf, in his place, we have the wonderful Mr. Delvin Kanêwiyakiho. Delvin is a knowledge keeper from the Little Pine First Nation, and he is with the Office of the Treaty Commissioner Speakers Bureau. He has 28 years experience as an educator with the Greater Saskatoon Catholic School Board, and he is a certified treaty catalyst teacher, and he helps colleagues with their treaty teaching using the treaty curriculum and uses his own experience to give students a good start on their learning journey. In 2015, Delvin received Indspire's Guiding the Journey Indigenous Educator Award in the Language, Culture, and Traditions category. He has cultural currency to speak about most things related to treaty and Neheo-settler relations in Canada. Delvin Kanêwiyakiho is a Plains Cree who was raised on the Little Pine First Nations. Mr. Kanêwiyakiho, the floor is yours.
Even if you're
I will.
okay, all right. Okay. Hello, kanse kyo katam skat no nanas komun kantung ko yan umut ka bebigs ko yan. Niya ni hiyo was kitso so tsanya. Utasas Saskatoon ni wigan na iso teatos kya. Nanas komun kyapse ni hiyo matsyan. What you just heard is me introducing myself to you. I am so grateful, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that are here and for those of you that are out there in the internet world watching over this digital platform. I'm so grateful that I can speak my language. I'm so grateful that I grew up in a way that I was able to appreciate the old people. And those old people were often interviewed and spoken to by my parents, as my parents too were on learning journeys, learning about their culture, learning about their ways of knowing. And so my parents would entertain these old people, and they would come and they would visit and banter with my parents. And as a little boy, I would sit silently watching this interaction between the old people and my parents. And I became really interested in what these old people were saying. So to me, those old people are like human libraries, kind of like we're in the midst of all these books here at McNally Robinson. Well, the elders that I saw were human libraries. They had so much knowledge. And I watched my parents work with these old people, and they in turn learned from these old people and were taught protocol. And then those protocols were taught to me by my parents. For instance, this tobacco that you see in my hand, which was given to me by my colleague, Elaine Sutherland. She gave this tobacco to me as a way of saying thank you for coming to this function to speak with these people here online and in person. Well, this is something that I saw my parents do quite a bit. They would give tobacco to old people, and the old people in turn would take that tobacco and they'd shake hands with my parents. And then those old people would teach their culture or anything that my parents wanted to know about culture. And so I learned how to do that. And so today, I approach old people. Anytime I want to learn about something, I give tobacco because I respect the knowledge that these knowledge keepers have, these elders, these ceremonial people. And so through the gifting of tobacco, I would get something from these elders, knowledge that I was seeking. You see, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I am a seeker. And I'm always looking for knowledge, whether it's from my people or other people here on Treaty 6 territory. And so that tobacco is very important. So thank you, Elaine, for giving me this tobacco and giving me that doorway that I can enter in and to speak and to share my thoughts with all of you. So I want to teach you some Cree words. There's a word, we call it tawao. We say tawao. Tawao kind of means like welcome, but really tawao means there's an open space for all of you. Come in and be a part of our circle, be a part of our home, our space. So that is something that I learned. And so tawao is kind of like getting this tobacco, and I have the opportunity now to share some of the things that I'm going to talk to you about. Okay? So before I do that, I want to sing you a little song. Now, I'm a song keeper as well. I'm a ceremonial singer, and I'm a powwow singer. I might not be the best singer, but I sing. Okay? And so this song I recently learned from my grandfather, A.J. Felix, who was sharing this song online through YouTube. He was captured in this video at some conference in Manitoba. And he was telling the people in that conference, you can learn this song. And you can change the words if you want, but you can learn the song and I give it to you. So one thing that I'm passionate about is teaching children, especially grandchildren. And I have two grandchildren that I'm close to. They are both 24. And one of them just had a baby. And so I'm a chapan, which means I'm a great grandfather. Okay? And so I'm going to sing this song that speaks to how we honor the young people. No se waneska, no se nanasko mata do waneska, no se we way oh way ya hey ya way ya hey ya way ya hey yo way hey ho one is God no say one is God what get us get out one is God no say way away hey way away hey way ya hey way away hey yo way yo. That song is called Wake Up Grandchild. Let us pray to the Creator. Wake up, grandchild. Our land looks beautiful. That's what that song says. And so my wife and I, we sang that song for our grandbaby, our little great grandchild. And my granddaughter videoed us and she shared it on Facebook. So, young people are so wonderful. And as a teacher, which I am, which you heard from Elaine, I've been working for Greater Saskatoon Catholic Schools since 1994. And in working with the children, the best experiences that I've ever had is learning about them, where they come from. And then I get to share with them where I come from. I come from here, that's what I tell them. And I am Indigenous. I am Plains Cree. And so through dialogue and sharing thoughts about treaty, I share with these treaty people that they belong here. And in our treaty curriculum, we teach our children that we are all treaty people. Because sometimes when you think about treaty, you think it's just an Indigenous thing. That is a fallacy. We are all treaty people. And so when I share my treaty knowledge and my culture, my songs, my stories, while I teach treaty with the young people, my heart blossoms like a rose. I feel good because I'm doing something for these children. And you know what? For the last 147 years, since Treaty 6 was entered into between the First Nations people here and the European people that came here, it's always been us that's learned those European ways through those colonial or colonization waves. And for the last 147 years, we've learned English, we've learned the French, we've learned the European customs, which became Canadian customs. And we've learned everything about European peoples. But you know what? Since treaty education was mandated more than 15 years ago here in Saskatchewan, the only province that does that, I get to share my culture and my voice and my songs and my ideas of our worldview. And I get to share that with the children. And never before did we have that opportunity. And once it became mandated, I had that opportunity to share my culture, to share Indigenous ways of knowing. And so Indigenous ways of knowing, there's so many things to teach about. There's protocol, there's gender roles, there are TB teachings that you teach, ceremonial teachings, drum teachings, dance teachings, relationships. There's ideas on how Indigenous people treated each other before treaties were created in Canada, 1 through 7 especially, okay? Because we've always had treaties here on this land. And we've always had them because we knew as Indigenous people that each of our nations had specific territories throughout this land. And in order to go hunting, harvesting, gathering in another people's territory, we would treat with those people. We would sit down, we would smoke the pipe with them, we would pray, and we would offer gifts as a way of saying, thank you for allowing me into your space. I won't stay too long, I'll just tarry a bit, but when I'm done, I'll go back to my space. And so we respected each other like that. So a treaty was like that for us. And so in my culture, we have a lot of respect for other First Nations people. Now, my brother here spoke about being a newcomer, coming here. As a treaty person, I feel it is my responsibility to get to know who is here on this land with me. And so anytime I run into students that speak different languages, I'm always asking them, how do you say this in your language? How do you say that in your language? You know, as an Indigenous person, I am following tradition because in our culture many years ago, the old people were polyglots, meaning they spoke more than one language because of the close proximity of Indigenous people around them. And so through treaty making alliances, intermarrying, they would learn other Indigenous languages. Well, I'm that kind of a person because I am a language geek, okay? And so I speak several languages. My first language was Nehio. You call it Plains Cree. My second language was English. My third language that I picked up was Spanish. So yo hablo español porque aprendí el español cuando yo viví en los Estados Unidos. You see right there. And when I go down south, like to Mexico, people sometimes think I'm Mexican because I speak the language. And I'm also learning Francais because my wife is a Quebecer. And we will move soon to Quebec. And I love the Quebec culture. I love the language. So I'm a polyglot, and I also learn from different peoples. Like Tagalog, ¿Cómo está acá? That's their way of saying, how are you? And to answer, you would say, Mapuche, I'm good, okay? Or if you're Chinese, Ni hao ma, how are you? Wo han gao shing ren shuni. It is good to meet you. So you can pick up any languages. You just have to put your mind to it. But I'm that kind of a person who loves languages because I feel it is my duty as a treaty person to get to know other treaty people. Because when those treaties were entered into so that we could both prosper and benefit from treaty. So the more I learn about your culture, I'm benefiting, I'm prospering. And you know, my brother here who just spoke with you, he's from Nigeria originally. Well, I see a lot of Nigerians within our school division. Just a while back here, I was sharing these kinds of teachings with the student body at St. Therese de Lisieux on the east side. And a third of the student body was Nigerian. And I asked them, well, what tribe are you from? Do you still speak your language? And they said, yes, they still have that. And I told them, do not forget your language. Do not get swallowed up by English hegemony. Learn your language because it is who you are. Your language tells you how you see the world. And in my culture, language is so important. And so, succinctly put, as a part of helping you understand a little bit about my culture, an Indigenous worldview is like this. We believe that we're all spiritual people. You and me, we have this thing called Atzak. That's that life force inside of us. And that Atzak is connected with everything. Then you have your relationships, because your spirit, you're related to everything around you that has spirit. So in my culture, we have ceremony that reminds us that we're spiritual and relational. And then that ceremony happens on the land. That's the fourth principle. Our land is Mother Earth. We cannot own her. And that was something that was really bizarre for our ancestors to think that they could own land, because everybody benefited from that land. All Indigenous people, all people prospered from that land. So land is important. And also ceremony is done in the language. Language is very important. So those are our 5 principles. And the last principle is, as Indigenous people, we have a connection with our ancestors. We never forget our ancestors. Just because they're dead and gone doesn't mean they're dead and gone. We have memory of them and we honor them, and we have ceremonies that we do, which helps us to remember who they are and where we come from. So those are the 6 principles of an Indigenous worldview, but there's much more. So I could speak so much more, but I was given that 5-minute sign. But I just wanted to say, the man that was supposed to speak with you tonight, Sheldon Krasowski, he wrote that book. Okay? No Surrender, the Land Remains Indigenous. I read that book 2 times. And it's a awesome book. And he talks about treaty, how treaty happened as it came onto the prairies, as it came from the east, touching into the Lake of the Woods area, into the north. And at that time, this was called Northwest Territories. Right? Can you believe that? And so as these treaty people moved, these commissioners, they did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And he treats about these 7 treaties, and he talks about them and how each treaty was different. But it was the Treaty 6 chiefs that wanted more. They wanted a medicine chest clause that would help them to get well if they were sick. And this was in response to smallpox. They wanted to get medicine. Another thing was the old people wanted relief if there was famine. Just in case there was famine and you couldn't grow crops, they wanted support to be able to grow those crops. Okay, and they wanted as well assistance to acclimatize to a new culture, a new way of life, which was agriculture. And so in accordance to those Treaty 6 chiefs, we shared the land with the newcomers, with the Europeans, about 8 inches, which is about the depth of a plow. That is what they shared. But of course, when you do your treaty studies, it goes more than that. Okay. So I just wanted to share tidbits of that. But if you don't have that book, buy it, because it's a great treaty resource for me when I do treaty teachings. So I pick and choose from all those books, including Sheldon's book, and I share those understandings and those learnings. And you know what? Just as a way of ending here, it's those children that are the treaty ambassadors. Because the learnings that they get in school, they're the brokers of treaty learning with their parents, with their grandparents. Because I'm sure at night at the supper table, the parents ask, So son, my daughter, what did you learn today? And of course, they're going to talk about we are all treaty people and that we should benefit and prosper from the land that was shared with us as descendants, those Europeans that came here. Of course, that's going to tweak a person's mind. What do you mean? Of course, our treaty ambassadors, those students that will teach these things to, they will explain a little bit to the best of their ability. So I just wanted to say that. So I hope I fulfilled the request made of me by Elaine and Sheldon and the Heritage Society. There's so much to teach. And I'm sure my brother here from Nigeria, who's now living here, I'm sure he'd teach more too. But c'est la vie, that's life. I only have a little bit of time. Okay, but thank you very much for listening to me. So thank you for chiming in out there in the digital platform world. And for those of you here in this audience, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Bye.
Here. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So as we're moving forward with our questions, I guess as Delvin was mentioning treaty, Michael, the question for you would be, as a newcomer, have treaty rights or treaty knowledge ever entered into your thinking or came across in your experience in the 3 years that you've been here? If so, how do you share that with fellow newcomers?
Thank you so much, Elaine. That's a really good question. When you say, and I've often heard that saying as well, that we're all treaty people. It's not just a slogan, like it really means what it says, that we're all treaty people. I'm from Nigeria, like I said earlier, and we also have a colonial past as well. And it wasn't only until 1960 that we gained independence from the British. I guess the difference between what happened in Canada and what happened in Nigeria is that the British didn't come, as colonial settlers, and so they came, they did the thing, and then they left, which was a different experience here. And so where I first moved here, and I heard about the residential schools, like it was, whoa, like this happened. But we have the missionary schools back home in Nigeria and maybe some other African countries as well. Schools that were where you had like religious Catholics or Anglicans running the schools. So we had missionary schools as well. Language, which is very key. We were also made to feel like our language was inferior. And so you are discouraged from speaking your language. Our names, I had these cousins who, when they were kids, they had like African Nigerian names. And one day they went to school and then the teacher was calling, like, for instance, Mary, like, who's Mary? The parents had changed their names and they didn't even tell the kids that their names had been changed, just so that they sounded European and they could pronounce them easily, so there are so many things that we lost. And our country, my country, was founded on all those treaties and amalgamations and proclamations and a country, a land that had always been in existence. A word was spoken or a decree was made, and that land became another land. So we kind of have those experiences. Like Delvin said, we're also treaty people. We have that experience. We have all those agreements that were signed 1914, 1890, 1900, that kind of dictated our relationship with our own land, as well as our relationship with, the people who came the British who came and colonized us as well. So seeing those connections, arriving here, I say, like, I'm a treaty person, we're all treaty people, and I mean it. Like, I say all the time that our experiences may not be identical, but they're similar, and when you look deeply, you see those similarities, and those similarities kind of bring us together. And so as a newcomer, I kind of feel like my role being here is to help to amplify, the conversations that's happening around truth and reconciliation, and to lend my voice to those conversations, to amplify. And so if in my book, I said 7 people have read my manuscript before it's been published, and I know one of them lives in the UK, and how they called me back to say, oh wow, I never knew that these things happened in Canada. So I feel like that's my role as a storyteller. Give me the permission to tell your stories and share your stories, because at the end of the day, we are all treated people.
Thank you so much, Michael. So if I can just further ask you one further question on that, is how would you share that knowledge, or how do you share that knowledge with newcomers that arrive here in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm thankful for my gift of storytelling and writing. And since being here in Canada, like, I've been in events, I've collaborated with Indigenous storytellers to tell stories together. My book, putting my knowledge in my book, but maybe even more importantly, the creator has placed me in a position where, within such a very short time in Canada, I'm executive director for an organization that deals with newcomer settlements, together with the frontline workers who work in those organizations. So I don't know why, it had to be me, but it's a burden that I carry with a whole lot of responsibility. And so using my gift of writing, using my position and my job in the settlement sector, to constantly tell the stories, and bring as many people to the fold as possible. And only last week, my organization, Sasha, was involved with the Reconciliation Saskatoon. And we had a talking circle together, an event called Connecting Nations. So those are ways that I actively, and it has to be intentional. Like, you can't, oh, you know what, I just woke up, rolled out of bed, and somebody was there, and I told them, like, you have to go out of your way. You have to be intentional about learning about Indigenous peoples. You have to be intentional about confronting the lies. And as a newcomer, oh my God, day 2, I arrived Canada on a Sunday. By day 1, my chaperone had taken us to the library. But we parked by the library because we had to go downtown to do some transactions and roll, all that. And from day 2, I'm told, oh, don't, like, stay away, lock your car. This is where you should live. I was only 1 day old in Canada, so if I wasn't fortunate enough to work where I work, I probably would still be living with those lies. And so my responsibility is to confront those lies and replace those lies with the truth.
Thank you so much, Michael. Delvin, this is a 2-part question for you. As a treaty status Indigenous person, what do you view the treaty rights and responsibilities to be? And 2, what is the best way to learn about those treaty rights and responsibilities, both as an Indigenous person that doesn't know about them, or for other newcomers, or even Saskatoon society as a whole?
That's an awesome question. Wow. So, as an Indigenous person, as a treaty person speaking to treaty people in this room, my rights and my responsibility is to make sure that you know who I am, okay? And why Creator put us here. And the philosophy that comes with our culture and our language and our ceremonies. And so in saying that, my right and responsibility then is to get to know you. Because I live with you here in the spirit of the wow. Welcome. There's open space here for you. Our ancestors called those Europeans Kitsawangawak, our cousins. Okay. And also the woman, they had a name for those Europeans. Kiwakumagandawak, our relatives. So the men called you cousins, and the woman called you relatives. And so my rights and responsibility as a treaty person is to relate to you as my relative. Okay? Which is the spirit and intent of treaty. And so if I can foment that and encourage that in us, in our treaty relationships, then I am fulfilling that right and responsibility as a treaty person. And I hope to awaken that in you, that you're not scared of me. And like my brother here said, you know, there's misconceptions about Indigenous people. They're this, they're that. But you know, like he said, they're lies, they're misconceptions. If you get to know me, then you're getting the truth. And you get to know that I want the same things as you want. I want a nice home. I want a nice ride. I want a job. I want to be able to pray in my own way. I want to be able to relate peacefully with everything, within the environment and with people, without oppression. So, but that's a different matter altogether. If I was to teach you more about the Indian Act, which denigrated the treaty and the spirit in the treaty, then you would see really the underside of these policies, which were meant to protect us, but control us at the same time. And we're the only people who are controlled by a policy that comes from government that was created in 1876. And that controls us. And through that act, our people have been dispossessed of the land. We've been made to be dependent on a government, and they did that intentionally, and they oppress us with the policies. So that speaks to colonization. Any colonized group experiences this. So my work as a treaty person is, if you want to know more, I have stories to tell you. But tell me what your experience is. Tell me your culture. Tell me your ways of learning. Yes, I've said that we've learned over the last 147 years about European culture. But there's got to be more than just the Toonie and the Looney culture, right? Tell me your stories. How did you go? How did your grandparents relate to the land? What was their relationship with the water? So that's the side of the story I want to get from you. That's what I always ask the children. So that is my right and responsibility, to awaken your rights and responsibilities as treaty people.
Thank you so much, Delvin. Before I go any farther, is there any online questions coming in?
None so far, but some thanks from the audience.
Okay, thank you so much. So before we leave, if I can just end off with Michael as an author. I'm always curious, I'm hopeful that you can possibly inspire either somebody that's listening here or somebody who's with us all over Zoom. How did you get started as the author? What awoken you to become an author that, the best-selling author that you are, how would you inspire somebody that's listening here today?
Thanks again. That's a very good question. I kind of found out, into my writing career that whenever people describe me as a writer or an author, it's kind of intimidating, because people kind of say, okay, you have to sit down, you have to write, you have to, your English has to be perfect, your French you have to know how to spell, and the truth is, I don't know how to spell. Like my spelling is horrible. So I tell myself, like, I'm a storyteller. It makes it easier for me not to seek perfection, so just tell the story the way it is. And, no matter what the format is, it could be a poem, it could be a children's book, it could be an article in a magazine. I just want to tell my story. And sometimes I say, no, I'm going to tell my story. I use my horrible grammar, my bad spelling, and then there's an editor who's going to help me clean it out. So it makes it easier for me. But the thing is, like, I try to simplify that process, like just write the story. And coming to Canada and as a newcomer and an immigrant, the first few years of being here, I was doing multiple jobs, but I still wrote 2 novels, and I kind of learned to just zone everybody out. Like, I'll come back home and the kids are running all of this, TV's on, there's music in the background, but I'll just zone everybody out. Back home in Nigeria, sometimes I could go to a hotel and I'll take days off and go and write, but I didn't have that luxury here. So I learned to write in the midst of noise. Just bring out my laptop and then just start telling my story, in the very simple way it comes to my mind. So I think the key is don't think too hard about it. Don't be intimidated by the volumes of books you see here. Just see it as sharing your story. And when you share your story, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's your truth. And that's the most important thing.
Thank you so much, Michael. Delvin, real quick, as somebody that might be listening either here or over Zoom again, as you've talked about treaty education, how is one way that somebody is listening that doesn't know about treaty education, how would they be able to learn about treaty education if they don't even know where to start?
Well, if you want to learn about treaty education and you have no idea what it's all about, well, talk to me. Talk to Elaine. Talk to others who know treaty, who understand treaty. Just like my brother said, there are storytellers over there. We call them elders. They know about treaty, like my father and my mother. Elders that know their culture, they have their currency, their language, their understandings of ceremony. Those are the people to talk to. As you continue on in your journey, go to your library, because there's a section of your library that probably holds Sheldon's book, downtown at the main library. Or even here at McNally's, you can buy it. There's so many resources that you can get to learn about it. And you can speak to your children, your grandchildren, because they have that knowledge. They can tell you as much as they can, whether it's kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, all the way to grade 12. So if you've had children that have been going to school for the last 15 or so years, they have received that treaty education. Just ask them. Okay, don't be afraid, because they might just drop some truth bombs. And so that is what I would say.
Thank you so much. As we're concluding here, I would like to take the time to thank you to McNally Robinson and the Heritage Festival of Saskatoon for hosting this wonderful event. I would like to say a wonderful thank you so much to Michael Afenfia and Delvin Kanêwiyakiho for being our guest panelists today. And on behalf of the Office of the Treaty Commissioner, thank you so much for hosting this event as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just say, once again, thank you to the Heritage Festival of Saskatoon, to Rayanne and Irene, and to our speakers, Delvin, Michael, and Elaine. Thank you all for being here. As Michael mentioned, he's releasing his newest book, Leave My Bones in Saskatoon, and he will be having a release here at McNally Robinson on Friday, April 28th. More information will be available soon, so please keep an eye out for that. And if you'd like, you can leave your name at the till to be notified when we receive stock of the book. Thank you so much for joining us and have a wonderful evening.